And hello again from Fox News in Las Vegas. We are live on the Strip here at the MGM Grand Hotel just down the road from UNLV, the site of Wednesday's final debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, moderated by our very own Chris Wallace, who is busy preparing today. Well, as the candidates also prepare, both campaigns are in damage control as Donald Trump continues to face allegations of groping women, and new WikiLeaks emails show troubling insights about Hillary Clinton's top associates. Today, we'll discuss it all with both vice presidential nominees. We'll get to Senator Tim Kaine in just a moment, but we begin with Donald Trump's running mate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence. Governor, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Good to be with you, Brett.
Governor, there's a new poll out this morning, a Washington Post ABC poll, and it shows the race essentially tied within the margin of error. It's 4 points, but if you look at it, it's exactly the same as it was before the conventions. I want to get your state of the race, and considering that some states, Republican states like Utah, Arizona, Georgia, even your own state of Indiana, according to some polls, are very tight. What is happening out there?
I think what's happening is this is a highly contested election, and it's going to be fought all the way to the finish. I couldn't be more proud to be standing shoulder to shoulder with Donald Trump as he articulates an agenda to make America great again. And I have to tell you, the crowds that I saw across Florida, the crowds that gathered with Donald Trump yesterday in New Hampshire and Maine are all just determined to bring real change to this country, Brett. I mean, look, the last 7.5 years have weakened America's place in the world, stifled America's economy, and begun to walk away from our most cherished constitutional principles. And as Donald Trump did last Sunday night in the debate, we're going to continue to frame this campaign around the issues that matter most to the American people. And I think that's why the polls are close, and I think that's why we've got a great opportunity, a great opportunity for a great victory come November the 8th.
Governor, Donald Trump has not let up. He's campaigning all the time. He does it in his own Trump way. But yesterday he said something that did raise some eyebrows. Take a listen.
We should take a drug test prior, because I don't know what's going on with her. But at the beginning of her last debate, she was all pumped up at the beginning. And at the end, it was like, oh, take me down. She could barely reach her car.
Governor, do you think Secretary Clinton should take a drug test before Wednesday?
Well, look, all I know for sure is that Donald Trump's going to be ready for the debate on Wednesday night. And the American people are going to see someone who is prepared to lead this country, prepared to bring the kind of strength and determination that it's going to require to really turn this country around. Look, more than 7 out of 10 Americans know our country's headed in the wrong direction. And Donald Trump has articulated a message of strength, a message of rebuilding our military, reviving our economy, not through the tax increases that Hillary Clinton's advocating, expanding Obamacare, and open borders policies that she actually advocated in a speech in Brazil, but through the kind of policies that have always revived America's strength at home and abroad. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to the debate, and I know he'll be ready for it come Wednesday.
All right, drug test or not, I want to ask you some specific policy questions in just a minute. But I know you've answered these questions about the accusations. There's a new one out today, now 9 women with these allegations. And I know you've said that they're politically motivated and they're all not true. But I want to ask you 2 things about the way Donald Trump has talked about them and pushed back hard, denying them, saying on numerous occasions, how could this be true? Look at her. Have you talked to your daughter about that defense and this whole issue, and how do you explain that?
Well, let me just say that I thought it was right and proper last weekend for Donald Trump to apologize for the offensive comments that he made in a video that was released 11 years ago on an open microphone. He said he was embarrassed. He apologized to his family. He apologized to the American people. But frankly, the timing of these unsubstantiated claims that have come forward, all of which Donald Trump has categorically denied, is, I think, deeply troubling to millions of Americans. I know there's countervailing evidence that's coming out right now, and more information will probably come. But the American people are very, very troubled. Once again, here we are in an election of such enormous magnitude in the life of this nation. And once again, the media is piling on with unsubstantiated claims as the headlines while they ignore an avalanche of hard evidence about corruption, pay-to-play, political favoritism emanating out of Hillary Clinton's years as Secretary of State. I mean, we found out this week, Brett, that while she was Secretary of State, her officials in that department actually directed reconstruction contracts in Haiti to friends of the Clintons. This is precisely the kind of pay-to-play politics she said wasn't happening as their foundation accepted tens of millions of dollars from foreign governments. And just this morning, the New York Times is reporting that in exchange for a 5-minute meeting, the government of Qatar pledged $1 million to the Clinton Foundation. You know, the American people are tired of all of this, and frankly, they're very tired. Present company accepted, they're very tired of most in the national media who would go running after unsubstantiated allegations that Donald Trump has categorically denied, and while they willfully ignore an avalanche of hard evidence about Clinton's corruptions and scandals.
Well, about the WikiLeaks emails, you know, I know you look at the substance of those, and we've been covering the substance inside those emails as well, extensively here on Fox. But are you concerned at all about the fact that Russia, according to U.S. intelligence officials, has hacked into these computers and is, according to the intel officials, trying to influence this election in one way or another?
Well, I think there's no question that the evidence continues to point in that direction, and we should follow it where it leads, and there should be severe consequences to Russia or any sovereign nation that is compromising the privacy or the security of the United States of America. I mean, Donald Trump, more than a month ago, gathered a group of some of the leading cybersecurity experts in this country and announced our plans to strengthen the security of this country on the internet, and we will do that.
Is a cyber attack?
But make no mistake about it. My hope is that as the Vice President said on another network this morning, that there would be consequences. My hope is that this administration will follow through on that, because the president of France just this weekend said that the Obama administration's foreign policy that Hillary Clinton created of moving red lines in Syria actually was interpreted as a weak position for America and emboldened Russia to invade Ukraine and take a much larger role in Syria. We've got to follow through on our word, and we ought to follow the facts where they go. We got to protect the cybersecurity of this country. My hope is this administration will follow through this time.
I want to squeeze in two more questions quickly. Iranian-backed Houthi rebels firing on U.S. Navy ships. The U.S., despite firing cruise missiles back at these satellite installations, what would you recommend as Vice President, if it's President Trump, the U.S. military do? Should the Navy expand these strikes, or is there some fear of Iran being drawn into a war there?
The United States Navy and the United States of America cannot tolerate aggressive action against our warships. But it's important to remember that the militia in Yemen that's firing those missiles has been supported by Iran. And this administration, with Hillary Clinton's full assent, just delivered $150 billion that the Iranians said they were putting in their defense budget. And it could well be that some of that $150 billion, including $1.7 billion in cash, made its way to Yemen and is subsidizing these very attacks against U.S. naval warships. Look, we've got to rebuild our military. We have the smallest United States Navy since 1916. We have the smallest standing army since the end of World War II. When Donald Trump becomes president of the United States of America, we're going to rebuild our military, and we're going to stand tall on the world stage, and we are not going to tolerate aggression against American forces or American interests, whether it comes from Yemen or is subsidized from any other country like Iran.
Governor Pence, I just have a few seconds left. What advice would you give your nominee for Wednesday's debate?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Brett.
Well, what advice would you give your nominee for Wednesday's debate, quickly?
Well, I would just tell him just be himself again. I thought in the first two debates, Donald Trump brought that authentic voice that has really given given voice to the aspirations and frustrations of millions of Americans to a national stage. And he clearly won the debate last Sunday night because he was talking about the issues that matter most to the American people: restoring our military, standing tall in the world again, reviving this economy, creating jobs, upholding the Constitution in the Supreme Court of the United States. I mean, I understand why many in the national media, present company accepted, want to talk about everything else except the issues. But Donald Trump won that debate last Sunday, and he's going to win the debate on Wednesday because he's going to keep talking about the issues that matter most to the American people and the chance that we can make a change of the fundamental direction of this country back to a stronger and more prosperous nation.
Governor Pence, we appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Brett.
As Hillary Clinton takes time off the trail to prepare for the debate, there are plenty of unanswered questions about the newly released WikiLeaks emails surrounding her campaign. We spoke earlier this morning with Democratic vice presidential nominee, Virginia Senator Tim Kaine. Senator, thanks for being here. I want to put up the latest poll from Washington Post to ABC. It is essentially exactly where this poll was before the convention, 47 to 43. Judging from all the things that you and Secretary Clinton are saying on the trail about how unacceptable Donald Trump is, why do you think this poll is so close, within the margin of error, actually?
Brett, yeah, it is close, and I'll tell you, I'm used to this. I'm from Virginia. All of our races are close, and I've been saying from the beginning that I thought this would be a close election. So it doesn't particularly surprise me. We are seeing some data about voting, whether it's registrations, early voting, and requests for absentee ballots in key battleground states that we like. But I'm down in South Florida campaigning yesterday and today because Florida's close, and there's so many other close states. We have to assume that's the case, and I think it'll be the case right up to the end.
Senator, a lot of information is coming out, as you know, in these WikiLeaks emails, including some pretty embarrassing things from communications in the Clinton communications staff and Clinton campaign. Are you comfortable with what has been said in some of those emails about Catholics, about Latinos, Governor Richardson, a needy Latino, about former NAACP leader Ben Jealous, taking him to be powerless? What's your reaction to the specifics we're learning and the substance of those emails?
Yeah, Brett, let me do it. But before I get to specifics, and I want to talk about a couple of them, we just got to be a little bit careful about these because since they're part of an effort by both Russia and WikiLeaks, and neither of those are kind of neutral transmitters of information, you can't just automatically assume that everything is on the up and up with these emails. Just as an example, there's one email that references me that is completely inaccurate, and whether it's inaccurate because the sender didn't know what he or she was talking about or it's been doctored, I don't know. I don't take all these at face value. But let's talk about the Catholic one, Jen Palmieri, who is Catholic. She has said, yeah, I sent that email and I had some opinions and I shared them. But I do know what Hillary Clinton thinks about Catholicism because she picked a Catholic running mate. And we talked an awful lot about my own faith background. And she and I feel like that's a connection for us. She's Methodist, but had a powerful experience as a young person that still drives her today in her own faith practice. So I know with respect to Catholics, she views this as an asset because it creates a connection between us in terms of our approach to service. So yeah, look, some of these emails that are leaked, if they're accurate, they show people offering, opinions and mouthing off a little bit here and there. But that's the kind of thing that happens.
But Senator, there's more substantive things that raise questions about, for example, the email investigation. Here is President Obama talking about what he knew and when to CBS News. Take a listen.
Mr. President, when did you first learn that Hillary Clinton used an email system outside the U.S. government for official business while she was Secretary of State?
At the same time, everybody else learned it through news reports.
Did you know about Hillary Clinton's use of private email server?
No.
While she was Secretary of State?
No.
At the same time, Senator, he was using a pseudonym and an email address to communicate with Secretary Clinton, and there is communication and there are emails from staff that suggest they wanted to hold that back, and we're talking about what to do. Did the president lie there?
Well, I don't know, because if I actually do not know if he's communicating by email with Hillary. Does he know that it's a private server? I mean, I don't exactly know if I send somebody an email exactly what their setup is. I don't really think about that much, and I can't imagine that the president, with all that's on his mind, would either. What I do know is this, that there was an extensive, as you know, Brett, investigation by the FBI under the direction of a wonderful and tough career public servant, Jim Comey. Jim was in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia when I was the mayor of Richmond, and he's somebody with the highest standards of integrity. And he reached a conclusion after a very long investigation that no reasonable prosecutor would take this to the next step. And I think that still has not been effectively challenged. I know there are people who would like to relitigate that, but given the depth of that investigation and his own credibility, I think his conclusion, probably gets it right.
Understand that, but the campaign is focused on the Russia angle, and definitely you talk to U.S. intelligence officials, they are very concerned about Russia interfering into cyber attacks. That's clear. But at the same time, you're saying that while John Podesta's Gmail was hacked by Russia, you're saying that Hillary Clinton's server was completely ironclad and was not hacked at all. You mentioned Director Comey. Here's what he said about the private server.
I'm not looking to pick on Gmail. Their security is actually pretty good. The weakness is in the individual users. But yes, Gmail has full-time security staff and thinks about patching and logging and protecting their systems in a way that was not the case here.
So in other words, John Podesta's Gmail was less secure than Hillary Clinton's server.
Well, Jim Comey also reached a conclusion, the FBI investigation, that they didn't have any evidence that these materials had been compromised. And I haven't seen any evidence come out since he rendered that conclusion that would cause me to question that.
About some other shoe to drop in the next 20 days.
I'm not. I mean, look, it's very clear that both Russia and WikiLeaks want to, drop a few documents at a time to try to create a story. I think the marginal utility of each successive dump gets less and less. And just, out on the trail, so many people, they want to talk about jobs or how can America be safe in a dangerous and challenging world. They are worried about this Russia angle, though, Brett, as you mentioned. At least in my lifetime, I can't think of a precedent of a foreign nation trying to destabilize an American election. And I brought up a couple weeks ago the Watergate analogy of trying to destabilize an election by going in and grabbing files. And this is the current version of that Watergate attack, I think.
Senator, Watergate was also about a cover-up, and there was a story broken by Steve Hayes with the Weekly Standard last night, and in which an interview with FBI investigators looking at Secretary Clinton's email practices, an FBI records and classification official said that he felt pressure from Patrick Kennedy, a senior State Department official, to change the classification of some Hillary Clinton emails. To your knowledge, did anyone associated with Secretary Clinton or her campaign ask or instruct Kennedy to seek changes to classification of emails?
Absolutely not. I have no knowledge that happened. Absolutely not.
And if you found out that they were trying to, with a very specific way, hold back specific emails based on an arcane FOIA rule, doesn't that sound like somewhat of a cover-up?
Well, look, here would be something you'd have to look at. Classification of material changes all the time for all kinds of reasons, and they're not all nefarious. In fact, I'm on a couple of committees where I get classified information a lot, the Armed Services and Foreign Relations committees, and I'm often asking, okay, is this material that I can talk about, or is it material that I can't talk about? And I'll be instructed it's classified, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, it suddenly won't be classified, and officials in the Pentagon or State Department will be talking about it appropriately. So you do see classification of information change for very legitimate reasons. So that would be something that you'd definitely have to look at.
Two more things quickly, Senator. One is, were you upset when your hometown paper in Richmond did not endorse your ticket and in fact endorsed Gary Johnson? going as far as to say that Donald Trump nor Hillary Clinton were acceptable to endorse.
Brett, actually, you know, it's interesting. I was kind of pleasantly surprised when my hometown paper made that endorsement, because my hometown paper, and it's a great paper, I love the guys, but they've never endorsed me in any contested race I've ever been in, ever, in 22 years in elected office. Not for my first city council race, not for lieutenant governor, not for governor, not for senator. But what they do is they endorse Republicans. This is the first time that they have chosen not to endorse the Republican ticket for president in my memory, certainly in all the years I've lived in Richmond. So the fact that they could not see clear to endorse the Republican ticket in Richmond, that was the news.
Last thing, what's the advice to your nominee for Wednesday?
You know, I think the key, Brett, on Wednesday, sort of in the first two, I think she was very, very knowledgeable, and she demonstrated that, and there was a significant gap in that way between her and Donald, and I think he feels like he lost the debates, and that's why he's kind of going wild a little bit. But the other thing about it, it's the demeanor. I think that's what people look at. They're looking at that debate as a crucible, as a high pressure situation, and they want to see somebody whose demeanor suggests to them that person has the temperament to be president and commander-in-chief. She did a great job on that in the first two debates, and I certainly expect that she'll do that again.
Senator Kaine, thanks for the time.
You bet, Brett. Glad to talk.
Up next, how will Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton respond to the latest allegations in this week's debate? We'll bring in our Sunday group to discuss strategy and what's at stake Wednesday night as we continue our broadcast live from the MGM Grand Hotel right on the Strip here in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Now she's in debate prep. I don't know. This is Saturday. That's going to be Wednesday. If you got to study all that, you're supposed to know this stuff.
Is a little challenging debating someone like that. He seems remarkably unacquainted with the truth.
Both candidates revving up their bases as Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton get ready for the third and final presidential debate here in Las Vegas. It's time now for our Sunday group. Charles Hurt, political columnist for The Washington Times. Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin, who's covering the Clinton campaign. Monica Crowley, editor and columnist for The Washington Times. And Democratic strategist Joe Trippi. Jen, I want to start with you. First of all, we put up a Washington Post ABC poll earlier. That's pretty tight, 4 points. But the NBC Wall Street Journal poll just came out just moments ago, and it is at 11 points nationally. Two different polls, two different results. The average of polls has been around 5%. What are you seeing on the trail there and the concerns in the Clinton campaign of what they're hearing?
Well, they're not really concerned because they're looking at battleground state polls and what they're seeing in Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina in terms of early voting. What's interesting is that they have a record number of early ballots, particularly from Hispanics in Florida. 1 in 3 early ballots have been requested by Hispanics. And so they're looking at those battleground states. They say in Ohio, Robbie Mook, the campaign manager, had all the analytics. He said there are 1 million early ballots that have already been cast, mostly in the Cuyahoga and Franklin counties, which are favorable to Democrats.
For all their confidence, Charlie, there is still this sense that, if Donald Trump has a bad week, he's still kind of hanging around.
Yeah, I mean, 5 points or 11 points. After what Donald Trump has been through in the past 2 weeks, it is the worst media maelstrom in the history of television, I think, for a political candidate. And the fact that he is still anywhere remotely within striking distance of Hillary Clinton, I think suggests that he's still in it. He still has a chance. And the question is, does he buckle down, focus on the issues, and stick with that stuff instead of going off on tangents?
You know, Joe, you saw Mike Pence, and he's been answering these questions about the allegations. I didn't go down the road too far, but I mean, you have to think he's wincing on some of these answers or some of this campaigning about the accusers.
Well, he has to be, because part of the whole problem, one of the difference in the polling numbers is women, and they've moved away from Trump. Even groups that tend to be Republican with women, moderate Republican women are moving away. And so this isn't how you get them back. They're gettable because they've been voting Republican all these years. So, and they've got arguments, but the argument isn't to go after the accusers. So I think this is that's what I think is going to be interesting about this debate is that the Donald Trump that shows up, that goes after the accusers and keeps giving Clinton this advantage, or does he try to reach out to them? That's what I think is going to be the key.
Monica.
Well, I think it's astonishing that throughout this campaign, this man who has never done this before, who still has a skeletal campaign and relatively little money compared to the $2 billion that Mrs. Clinton will be bringing to bear throughout this campaign, is still in this race. And particularly after the last 2 weeks where he has gotten hit time and time again, the fact that he's still standing tells me that this is still possible for him, despite what we're seeing in the polling battleground states and nationally. And that's because he's got the majority of voters with him on the core issues: economic growth, job creation, enforcing the border, dealing with illegal immigration, dealing with the existential threat of Islamic terror. So he's got the voters with him on the issues. If he can dispense with the latest scandal about the groping allegations quickly and forcefully in this debate, and then pivot to prosecuting the case against Mrs. Clinton and her record, and then promoting his own positive agenda, he will reset this campaign.
I think the question is over the bar of commander-in-chief and whether he got there throughout this process as of yet. You know, every debate there's that question. Jen, you know, Trump supporters say, look at these crowds. These crowds are huge in Donald Trump parlance. What about the Hillary Clinton crowds?
Well, we saw a little bit of a change this week. You're right. The crowds have been relatively small, 1,500 perhaps at each of the events. But we saw in Ohio, when she opened up the space, there were 18,000 plus people who came out on Ohio State University. The real concern of the Clinton campaign is that the campaign gets so ugly and that the rhetoric gets so negative that people decide to sit out. So that is why you see Michelle Obama and President Obama out on the trail saying, this matters. Make sure you you show up and vote.
Yeah, I mean, clearly Trump's crowds, though, Charlie, have been a lot bigger overall, 20,000, 30,000. The question is his enthusiasm. Yeah. Is it on his side even after all this kind of bad stuff?
I think he's lost a lot of it, and I think that's where the past couple of weeks with the media hitting him on all of this stuff has really hurt him, is just with the enthusiasm. But like I think Monica said, I think he can get it back if he delivers a great debate performance, talks about the issues, and gets over trying to hit back on everybody.
Quickly, Joe, when you look at the polls, and again, this is from the Trump campaign perspective, that they say it could shift. It could shift, or it's underreported. How many points could it potentially be underreported?
I don't think much. I don't think we're seeing that. I mean, I think this is one of the things, a lot of difference in these polls is just how do you project what's going to turn out, who's going to turn out. And so I think that the Trump campaign has decided to energize its base and to make sure they vote. I'm not sure there's enough of them, and that's why he's got to try to reach out to women and some of these people that have been pushed away. But that's what this debate's going to be about, I think.
Addition. Panel, we'll see you. We'll take a break right here. We'll see you a bit later. Up next, a look at the battleground map with political reporters from some key states that hold the path to the White House. A gorgeous early morning here. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday, live from Las Vegas. Joining me now to discuss the race in crucial battleground states, Chrissy Thompson, Columbus bureau chief for the Cincinnati Enquirer, Patricia Mazzei, political writer for the Miami Herald, and Tim Boyle, political anchor for Time Warner Cable News in North Carolina. Thank you all for being here. Let's go around the horn first about the presidential race, where things stand, what the campaigns look like, and what it looks like. Patricia, first to you.
In Florida, the average of the polls show Clinton up by about 3%.
She's got many more organizational offices around the state. I think she's up to 72. Trump was really slow in opening them here. And the campaign still expect this to be a pretty tight race. This is still the quintessential swing state. The Clinton camp has said that they're expecting it maybe to be a 1% to 2% race. Obama, if you recall, defeated Romney here by 1 percentage point, which was about 74,000 votes in 2012.
Yeah, Chrissy, in Ohio, boy, the campaign, the Hillary Clinton campaign, looked like it was kind of backing off Ohio and then turned around and started campaigning there hard.
That's right. We've seen, as with the start of early voting this past week, Clinton, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, John Legend, Madeleine Albright's coming next week. That any surrogate they can think of sending to Ohio to try to turn out their key African-American base and women voters. But among Republicans, there's a lot of enthusiasm by Trump supporters, but there's kind of some infighting still going on between the Ohio Republican Party and the Trump campaign, which just yesterday disassociated themselves with the chairman of the Ohio Republican Party. So a lot of turmoil going on there.
Chrissy, let me just ask you quickly, how much a difference does it make that the governor is not fully behind this campaign and the machinery of the governor's office is not activated?
Well, it's meant that the top organizers and the top political operatives in the state have not gotten behind the Trump campaign. Now, they've still hired some pretty good people, but their organization, as we've seen in other states, has kind of lagged the Hillary Clinton organization in strength and in numbers. And the chairman of the Ohio Republican Party, while he was a Kasich person, has been as helpful as maybe you can expect. However, he has been really honest to say that he's not sure if he's going to vote for Donald Trump, especially given some of the allegations of this past week. The tape from last Friday.
Tim, let's talk about North Carolina. It looks like one of the swingiest of swing states. And you have both a presidential race that's very tight, but also a U.S. Senate race that really wasn't expected to be very tight, but is very tight.
Yeah, Richard Burr, the incumbent, most people thought was going to win this pretty handily. Deborah Ross, the Democrat, she's a former state lawmaker and legal director for the ACLU in North Carolina. The Republicans were banking on that she was too liberal for North Carolina. But Richard Burr has really fell victim to a very close presidential race, and it is way tighter than anybody expected. In some polls, Ross is up by 1 or 2, and others, Richard Burr is ahead. It's all within the margin of error.
And Tim, is the campaign on both sides very active? Is one more active on the ground?
Are you talking about the presidential race?
Yes.
Yeah, they're both very active. I mean, last Monday we saw Mike Pence twice in North Carolina. President Obama was here on Tuesday. Both Mike Pence and Tim Kaine were here on Wednesday. Donald Trump made 2 appearances on Friday. And then we have Mike Pence scheduled for Tuesday this week already. And Tim Kaine will be in the state on Wednesday and Thursday as early voting gets started in North Carolina, which is a huge deal because more than half of North Carolinians are expected to vote before Election Day.
So that keeps you guys busy. Patricia, finally, the Senate race in Florida, Marco Rubio, the incumbent who decided to get back in, status of that race?
We have seen Rubio leading his opponent, who is Democratic Congressman Patrick Murphy, consistently for nearly 24 polls now. The averages have him up by about 5 percentage points, which shows that there is expected to be some ticket splitting with folks voting for Clinton for president and Rubio for Senate. He has maintained his support for Mr. Trump in the past week after falling under some criticism for remaining silent without saying if he was going to stick behind him or not. But it has been kind of tepid, and his campaign has said he's not going to campaign with him from here until Election Day.
Okay, Patricia, Chrissy, and Tim, thank you very much in those battleground states. We appreciate it. Next up, we'll bring back our panel here in Las Vegas to discuss how Wednesday's debate right here in Vegas will reshape potentially the race heading into November.
This was not just a lewd conversation. This wasn't just locker room banter. This was a powerful individual speaking freely and openly about sexually predatory behavior.
These are lies being pushed by the media and the Clinton campaign to try and keep their grip on our country. They are all false. They're totally invented.
First Lady Michelle Obama at a campaign stop for Hillary Clinton denouncing Donald Trump's crude past comments about women and allegations being brought forward. Another one this morning as the Republican nominee pushes back, claiming the system is stacked against him. We're back now with the panel. What potentially, Joe, breaks through here as we get ready for this debate moderated by our own Chris Wallace that changes dramatically the trajectory of this race?
I think the only thing is Donald Trump. If I were him, ask for forgiveness. Say you're sorry, and then say to the country, we've got 23 days to talk about the real issues.
Joe, you've just seen him campaign for day after day.
Yeah,
do you really think that?
That's why I don't have a problem giving him this advice on air. But that's what I would do. I don't think he'll do it. This is going to be about, does he continue to try to drive his base? And it's just not big enough with what he's driven away. And he's got to get people to take another look at him.
Monica.
Donald Trump's whole rationale for getting into this race was, I don't need this job. I'm rich, I have a successful business and a great family. I am doing this for the American people and the future of the country. That's what he needs to focus on in this final debate. He's got to prosecute the case against Mrs. Clinton, point to the wreckage of the Obama-Clinton economy and foreign policy, and say, we tried it your way. And then in the wake of all these WikiLeaks disclosures, put her on the defensive and say the media was colluding and still is colluding with your campaign to protect your candidacy. You're being tipped off as to the FBI investigation. There was collusion in terms of obstructing justice on the Benghazi emails. You knew that Qatar and Saudi Arabia were funding ISIS, and yet the Clinton Foundation was still taking tens of millions of dollars from these countries. If he's able to reset the campaign by laying out his positive agenda and then putting her on the defense, he has a fighting chance.
Jen, you know, we've been covering the WikiLeaks substance here on Fox in pretty significant detail. There's a ton of it coming every day. What would have to drop in there that would be big enough to change the dynamic of this race? I mean, obviously there are big things that have been out already, but big enough that it breaks through.
Well, I think that's the trouble in covering the WikiLeaks emails, because there are about 1,000 coming out each day, is that they aren't breaking through. It's a drip, drip, drip. And I think what you will see Hillary Clinton do tomorrow night is she's going to change the subject. She's going to be talking about the Russian involvement in the hacking. That's why you saw Mike Morell come out on Friday, the former acting CIA director, and say that it is chilling that the Russians would be involved in our election. That is going to be her pivot point throughout the debate tomorrow night. But what's important is I don't think that Donald Trump will be contrite. He's going to be on offense. And our own Fox News poll shows that if he gets 90% of the Republican voters, that's still only 30 of registered voters. That's still only 32% of the vote. That's not enough. He has to appeal to independents and to women, and he's not doing that right now. That's not the tone.
But Charlie, if let's say another shoe drops and we start seeing Hillary Clinton deleted emails from the 33,000, or I mean, what is the thing that this is so explosive that it changes it?
If it's a WikiLeaks thing, it's going to have to be something huge, because while Fox has covered it very fairly and aggressively, the rest of the media simply has not covered it, and it would have to be something so big that it shames the media into covering it forcefully. But what I think is sort of interesting about all of this is that Donald Trump has run this cowboy campaign talking about a rigged system and how there's corruption behind the scenes. All the while, these WikiLeaks have sort of demonstrated that actually he has a pretty good point about all of it, and it's proving his point. And if he is able in the debate to do, and I think he's done a very, very good job in the first two debates. I know I'm in the minority on believing that, but even in the first one. But if he can come back to that and just focus on the issues and focus on proving that his point that it's rigged and that it's everybody's corrupt and all that kind of stuff, and stay away from the personal attacks. He's got good footing.
There's a lot of ifs there. And obviously there's some people who say that the rigged talk is dangerous in the long term. But it's worked to fire up his base. Quickly, Joe, I talked with the local reporters about the Senate and the balance of power. House not in play, do you think?
No, I don't think
But
so.
the Senate is precarious for Republicans.
I think the House is getting more precarious, but not likely to go. The Senate, I think, goes to whoever wins the presidency. If these polls are right, and Hillary Clinton is winning in the majority of these swing states where there's Senate races, I think that the Democrats are going to win those seats, and probably enough of them that the Democrats take the majority.
Joe, Monica, Jen, Charlie, thank you. Gorgeous view here in Vegas, isn't it? Place your bets. Thank you. Be sure to tune in to Fox News Channel this Wednesday as Chris moderates the final debate, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, followed by post-debate analysis with Megyn Kelly and myself. You can also watch the debate on your local Fox station, anchored by our friend and colleague Shepard Smith. And that's it today from Las Vegas. Have a great week, and we'll see you the next Fox News Sunday.